Okay, it's a lesson for our KOINE Project class. Is it true that those who are believing, who are unwilling to stand against adversity or incapable of withstanding adversity, is it true that they're not really saved? And why I ask that is because in my experience where I had attended a local New Testament church where my wife, she's a church woman, grew up there like all those dear people did. And I was there, and there was always, it was notoriously known. I learned all the way back to 1986 before I'd even went there to present myself for membership. And I'd already heard about the legends in the church and the combative relationship between deacon board and pastor, or now business office and pastor. But these dear saints, these really wonderful people, they approached me and they said, well, sometimes we can't take the business meetings, whatever that meant. And I said, I don't know what you mean. They said, well, we just leave. So I stepped down from president of Landmark Baptist Church Incorporated. That was turned over to a deacon. I stepped down from moderator of the business meeting. That was turned over to a deacon. Now, these were church members who finally, like myself, said, let's just stop all this stuff. It's hurting all these good people. And people can't even stay for a meeting because it becomes so upsetting for them to watch this vitriol and contention, whatever that was. I didn't get most of it. They didn't know where I was from. But so I stepped down as the director of the Planning and Education Committee. I mean, I totally divested myself. Let's say I had my own kenosis. I debased myself so that it would be fair. If I could be in a weak position, then I could be in the meeting as a pastor, and then the congregation could be there as the Ecclesia. So I noticed that it never occurred to me that these people who couldn't withstand this or had no root that would stabilize and hold them firm and fast in a time, let's just say a short time of a business meeting, adversity, that they would literally position themselves strategically away from that meeting. So I began something immediately and was there as an interim at one time. And I would just announce before the meeting, those of you that need to go home, there's not really anything important tonight that I had brought to my attention. And if someone would just spring something on us, we would just table it so that we could all catch up and get on board with it and establish a consensus through collaboration, which I noticed that was so different, to be so considerate to people who could just go on home, get ready for the week. It would be a Sunday night, for example, and they could retire earlier and get home and not just be there. And I noticed there were some who thought if they brought something up, we could just all be a captive audience to their unwillingness to brief us, prepare us, notify us in advance. So I would just say, if anyone's here tonight prepared to carry on this discussion or wants to stay here and have a work session, you may, but the rest of us are leaving. And it was just so different to be so considerate to people, and their culture was so it was so contrary to their culture. And then for me to just be the pastor there, and I gave them I was there to assure that no one needs to be anxious in a meeting any longer. And there were bullies there. And it never occurred to me even once that, well, these people who strategically position themselves away from this adversity, even if it's a business meeting, which is hard to believe that an ecclesia would have business meetings, that were so upsetting that the older ones were telling me historically, some of them were so upsetting that they just don't even want to stay anymore. So I thought, well, let's look at Luke 8:13 again. I may have been misreading that because I never found a time in my life where I found it applicable. And since it is a parable and it's talking about where we preach the word and broadcast the seed and cast it out there, and John was the forerunner, so he had plowed the ground and Jesus had come, and here I am broadcasting this seed, the word. And in Luke 8:13, let's just say B, and it says, it's a relative pronoun here, which ones pros toward Chiron, a season, let's just say a season. This is a finite verb, pistu usin, and remember we'll stay true to our discipline here. Oase omeneti usin, removable knee, pistu. Which ones toward a season are believing? And let me just draw this arrow. Toward in the accusative case is this. It's outside the circle and it's toward it. So there we go. So this would be a season. And it's toward one. We would probably call it a span of time, but they're going towards it. They're not in it. They're just toward that. This could be indefinite. As long as it was just a season, there's nothing, there's no adversity about it. It says they're believing in that direction. Well, let's move here just for a moment, and let's go ahead and go down here. Kai, but it says, and in Cairo, in a season, and I believe it's pay. We've done this before, so let's just let it word itself out. Pay Rasmu. And yes, I've been in a serious accident and bruised all over and damaged, and the rest of me's looking really worse. But it reminded me of this text because these good people there, these precious people, and especially these two little ladies were just wanting to let me know how anxious and disturbing it was historically there for some of the meetings, that they would have to strategically position themselves away, and others would just strategically not show up so they could maintain their friendships or whatever was going on. So to have the character to collaborate and the integrity and demeanor, and to be mature enough people to behave in such a manner that made it an inviting and welcoming environment to generate or encourage collaboration, that was foreign to them. So it says in a season of adversity. And first of all, it says in. So this is our preposition in, and it's literally inside. It says, and so this would be the season, a season of adversity. Because I was just assuming because of priming that they had stopped believing, but that's not what this said. Of adversity, it says a fist, like a fist, untie. This says they are positioning away from the adversity. Think about that. I mean, I remember when I was first there, over 25 years ago, when I was asked to help them, of course, and I'd already worked there on staff for 5 years as an associate in outreach and minister of education, and I'd been there. I first approached for membership in 1987. Of course, I've already heard about them. I already attended the seminary before I was even a member of one of their churches, but that was from being in academia. So to be there and then hear these people, some of them were even concerned about me, and I didn't want to laugh and then marginalize their concerns, but I let them know. I said, "Oh no, it's all good. We'll come together as a church. The members of the church decide to serve as deacons. I, as a member, told them I would do the work of the pastor, and of course, on that contention that was constantly there, always contentious. Conveniently, they had a deliberately divided deacon board, which means when there's two sides, neither are responsible. The business office was always incriminated. So I just said, you guys bring an internal audit result, and then the deacon board, legendary deacon board, whatever that was, you bring your plans that they always feigned and pretended no one would listen to them. And I said, you work on your family deacon ministry, and I'll go and do the work of labor and word and doctrine, remain in the Word of God and in prayer. I'll take care of the sick and the dying. I'll rescue the perishing, do the ordinance, do all the classes, do all the follow-up on visitors, go out and develop an outreach program. So that was really easy. But again, it never occurred to me that when these people would strategically, I'll write that, strategically position themselves away from it, away from adversity. He says they had no root. And root is to hold them here and ground them to where they would stand their ground, if you will. Ground them, root them, trying to find the words that would make this make sense, but it never even entered my mind that these people must not really be saved because they don't want to stay in this meeting of men who were like intimidating. Their bullies were just the most ridiculous people I'd ever seen. Intellectually, they were not. And the character to be so inconsiderate and to disregard these people and then to quote, get their way by causing people to just say, oh, it's not worth it. I don't want to be, get crossways with this person. So that's why it was very convenient for those. But again, I am shocked that I had misread this. Nowhere in here it says that they stopped believing. It says they are believing toward a season which lacks adversity. So they would just continue that direction. But it says, and in a season of adversity, they're positioning away from the adversity. It didn't say they were stopped believing. So what they were doing, because they couldn't handle it, and there's a lot of people that can't when they're, let's say, babes in Christ. There's weak brethren Paul spoke of. He said if it bothered some for him to eat meat that was offered idols, that he would just not eat meat anymore. And he even said in Romans not to diminish a brother who eats vegetation only, a vegetarian, I suppose. So Paul was not saying that a person who was weak, a person who, then he said, you remember he said, the knowledge puffs up. He was talking about the knowledge that idle is not even one thing. And well, instead of them by love building up the others, they were going about living according to their knowledge, which made them indifferent toward those who needed that by love to build them up, which they needed the same knowledge, but it would be love would be what it would take to engage and build them up. And then he was talking about others who had different particular weaknesses, and he said, let's be careful about that. So he never stated that they had stopped believing. So this is it. Yes, someone, a believer who cannot withstand bullies, for example. Let's say, now all that's gone now. That's all done away because there was nothing about I do that. I've been doing that since I was, a youngster. And what you do is you create a learning environment. You encourage collaborative reasoning, collective learning. Even there were those who came in with their cut and paste off the internet, which I didn't even engage that thing until like 2010. But they would come in with, like a person was feigning himself a Calvinist and he was using his bully tactics to whatever that was. But since he didn't even know the words he was using, he had no understanding of the definitions. He didn't recognize the difference between formed categories and Bible categories. Others would come in picking sides in a eschatology or creationism, having no interest in anything that they were trying to just constantly catalyze and use their intimidation. And these people they were good people, great church. Those dear souls, most are in heaven now, but they literally came there in good faith, and some had been there for decades. We have a dear lady there now, still there after 70 plus years. We have other people there who are in their mid-90s now, and they have been faithful for decades and decades. So, these people are believers, and no, they did not stop believing. They just, in this direction, in this condition of adversity, they strategically positioned themselves away from it because they couldn't take it. Now, those of us like me, I didn't get half of what they were saying. But I was in the seminary, trained by men. I was trained in very high pressure organizations where we had to make improvements while we were making the schedule, let's say. We had to pay the bills while we were improving the process. While we were teaching and training, we were having to accomplish the goal. So that was just the real world. So you have a blessed day. Enjoy this lesson. And I think if those of you can feedback can help me, what I might be missing, but I think I just missed the bigger point is that these people without root could not ground themselves to withstand it, so they would strategically relocate. And that's quite a remarkable thing, because I've seen several people that I accommodated and insisted to assure that they would have a safe environment. And the bullies did not appreciate it. Of course, when people found out their bullies were just a lot of, let's say, inflated balloons, for example, there was no content. They were like clouds without water. They were balloons, just empty. A lot of space was being taken up. So you have a blessed day, and review this, but no, of course not. Believers who strategically position themselves away from bullies, from those who intimidate, from those who are contentious. They are not unbelievers. They are not unsaved. They are just not in a position strategically, without being grounded, to take their stand and hold that ground. That will be something that happens as they grow, and you go from a weak brother to a strong one, as First John talks about. Go from a weak brother Paul was speaking of, who couldn't even bear someone eating meat that was offered to an idol because they lacked the knowledge, definite article, the particular definitive knowledge that idol was not even one thing. So Paul accommodated that and assured that they were not, and he certainly didn't adjudicate the matter and say, well, they're not really believers, or they must have stopped believing. And I had read that, I don't know how I read that into this text, and I've used this text to show people had stopped believing, but it didn't say here there, it didn't say they are no longer believing. It said they're strategically positioning themselves away. So that's why you want a safe environment. A church especially should be very inviting, encouraging. Yes, there are some things there that people will hear, but the truth in love will certainly not be the truth in adversity. So you have a blessed day. Enjoy this lesson.